Well, welcome everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. For those I haven't met, I'm Corey Pegram. I'm a 2013 Wake grad, and I now help lead our Office of Family Engagement here on campus. So first and foremost, thanks for being here. And since this webinar is for freshman parents, congrats to your student on what hopefully has been a super successful year one at Wake. I've actually spoken to a few parents today who all mentioned how hard it is to believe that the first year is already almost over. And my experience at Wake was that that doesn't slow down at all, which is why we're really glad that all of you are already thinking about life and career readiness for your student, which is obviously the purpose of this webinar. So we are really fortunate here at Wake to have what we think is the very best life and career support team in the country, and our Office of Personal and Career Development, which many of you guys and your students probably know as the OPCD. And they're here to support your students in their journey of getting ready for life after Wake. So Wake has really been able to invest really meaningfully in that team, thanks in large part to a lot of generous parents over the years, and the student outcomes and results have been pretty extraordinary. So if you look on average over the last decade, over 96% of each graduating class is employed or in grad school within 6 months of graduation, which is a pretty incredible stat, obviously. And what's behind those numbers are one, we are really fortunate to have amazing students here at Wake. And we're also really fortunate to have amazing people supporting those students. So two of those people are here with us today. So Andy Chan is our vice president for the OPCD, and I'm going to turn it over to him in a second. Andy's been here at Wake for now 16 years after running the Career Center at Stanford's Graduate School, which was after he led several educational technology startups in the market. And like I said, he leads our OPCD team. He's also joined by another amazing person who some of your students may already know. Heidi Robinson is our associate VP for the OPCD, and she also leads our college to career courses on campus, which are really popular and useful life skills classes that hopefully many of your students will take part in the coming years. So Andy, Heidi, and then also we're also fortunate to have a couple awesome students with us tonight. They're excited to be with you, and they're going to talk to you a little bit about how your students can use their office's resources, what they're seeing in the market, and what they should be thinking about in the years to come. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
Corey, thank you so much for that introduction, and parents, welcome. We are so grateful that you're taking the time to spend with us this afternoon, and we have a lot of good information to share with you. As many of you might know, or you'll find out, is we do webinars about every semester for different parents of different class year. A big part of our strategy is actually to keep you all informed so that you know what's going on, that you can feel some sense, honestly, of comfort knowing that you're your student at Wake Forest, that they're in good hands, but also give you the real picture and be able to give you a forum for which you can ask questions if you have them. We also don't mind if you actually push your students our way, because our number one goal is to make sure that they're really cared for well, that they will live lives of meaning and purpose and will be able to thrive throughout their lives and learning how to think about strategically in terms of getting a job, managing the career, not just while they're in college, but after is actually that's our mission and something we're really dedicated to, but we can't help them unless we get to know them. So really pushing them our way is really key, which I know Heidi and the students will talk a little bit about how you can make that happen. I'm going to talk to start off a little bit about the marketplace and what's happening right now, some of the common questions we get asked. And then my colleague, Dr. Heidi Robinson, will join me and we'll talk about some of the more specific things that she sees with students and how she's instructing them and guiding them and her entire team who's there and is very experienced and able to help them. And then also we'll have then a few students to share some of their experiences and give you some of their advice too. We'll do our best to answer your questions. If you're in the webinar, if you at the bottom, you should see in the Zoom panel, there's a Q&A and you can type a question in there at any time. We'll either try to answer it while we're talking or our colleague, Patrick Sullivan, who coordinated this whole entire session will be in the background, giving you links to different web pages and resources that we mentioned throughout the webinar that you're more than happy to sort of click on them and have them in your browser, or you can wait and you will, in about a week or so, get a copy of the recording as well as all of the links from the webinar too. So know that that will be coming. So let's start. Let's start and talk a little bit about the job and internship market and how to think about it. So generally, if you read today's news, they're going to tell you that this is the worst time to be graduating from college because the job market is really, really difficult. And what's very interesting is that there's there's actually not full truth in that. There are actually quite a few opportunities out there in the marketplace. They're located in different sectors in different parts of the country, and so that ends up being part of the story. Is overall, though, we see specifically at Wake Forest, the number of jobs are high. In fact, higher this year than last year. The and internships the same thing. Employer interest is stronger than ever, and I'll speak a little bit to that. And that we actually are seeing super high student engagement in terms of them engaging in the career process and actually getting successful outcomes. So again, there's a big story that I think the media tries to tell you that obviously one of those interlaced is this idea about AI is taking away all entry-level jobs and internships. So, oh, woe is the college student. But I will tell you, and Heidi and I are going to share lots of ways students can get work-related experiences that are not about formal internships that will be as good or better than actually getting those what used to be formal internships at large companies. Um, so first step, the market is not as bad as it sounds in the press, and it's definitely really good at Wake Forest. The key is students have to be engaged. They can't be passive. They actually have to be very aware of the information, and we're going to give you some ideas on how to make sure you are aware of that, of all the things that are happening. In particular, there's a trend that many of you have heard about in terms of early talent identification. So in the areas of finance and consulting and accounting, those types of big companies in that space are trying to move recruiting up so that they recruit students during their sophomore year, basically the end of fall semester, beginning of winter semester or spring semester, to try to actually interview students. These are a very small number of firms and opportunities relative to all of the jobs available in the marketplace, but it can feel like these are the only jobs available, of which the students tell each other that. So it feels like you better get on this or else there will be nothing. And that's totally not true. So I do think one of the things that we want you to know is that we have lots of ways to help students if they want those types of jobs to get them. And we will share a little bit about how to think about that. But the reality is that there are many, many internship and job opportunities that come in a more just-in-time basis. We actually have had different firms this spring who've actually posting jobs, both full-time and internships at very top firms looking for people for this summer. And so again, students sometimes tell themselves, well, I missed it in the fall. There's nothing now, but there are opportunities now. You have to keep paying attention and just never give up. It's all about persistence. And as you know, people say, not only does the early bird get the worm, but the bird that just never stops looking for the opportunity is going to get a worm too. Um, I also will say that one of the things that can happen is that a lot of organizations, especially small to medium-sized organizations, have very short deadlines. So oftentimes they might post an opportunity saying that let's use it for example that the closing date for accepting applications is April 30th. But if actually when they posted it back on March 15th, they started getting lots of applications and they looked at them as they're going, oftentimes using technology, they will stop looking at any more applications, even though they posted the deadline as April 30th. So it really does pay for a student when they see something looks even partway interested, you've got to apply. And then on top of applying, you've got to figure out a way to network to get someone to say, oh, I've met you. And so we should talk to you because you look like someone who actually made the effort to try to connect with me. Just applying alone is not going to be enough as we go forward. So that's another thing we can talk a little bit about is how do we help students network, even first year students, to the extent that they want to find some kind of work related opportunities for this summer. So one of the things you'll hear a lot is that it is really hard to find something. And I will be honest with you, it is hard. It is actually harder than ever. I will say, you know, if I were to write a book, I would say job search stinks and job search always stinks until you have an opportunity, until you have the job. And the reason why is until you have it, you just feel a lot of rejection, a lot of effort, and not really sure if it's going to turn out. And that uncertainty can really weigh on you. I think there's a big mirage that's been created by technology where it misleads you into thinking this will be really easy because I can do it all online. I just sort of click a button. I've got a standard resume. Maybe I even have some AI to tailor it a little bit. And if I just keep clicking 100, 200, 300, 400 applications later, you don't get any replies. You maybe have a couple of interviews that didn't pan out. You just think this is a waste of time. And the challenge is that sometimes students are not pointing at the right things given their skill set or given how competitive it is. The reality is when you're an early first year student and the firms are looking for juniors, it's going to be hard to get something. And the other is that sometimes the types of things that might not look interesting could be actually quite interesting. You just have to get in your foot in the door. The second thing is that can happen, as I mentioned, is you may actually not have taken your high school resume and turn it into a really, really great college resume. And a lot of students will say, I don't have any experience. I really didn't do that much. But then they meet with one of our coaches, and all of a sudden we take that I didn't do very much into, wow, you actually have a great experience. And as you know, many of students, when they first come to school, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome, like everyone's smarter than me, or everyone's got more experience than me, or they have way more connections than me. And so no one's going to want to hire me. But when you actually sit down and talk to each student individually, they've got an amazing story. And it took an amazing story to get into Wake Forest. And we're going to help them take that amazing story and put it into a college resume, into a handshake profile, into a LinkedIn profile with a professional photo from our photo booth, and they will shine. But they have to do the work. They actually have to come to our office and we have to help them. Otherwise, they're trying to figure it out on their own. So I will say that one other thing is that we hear oftentimes students were always feeling like I'm behind. My friends who went to business, who are want to study business, or who are accounting majors, like they've got it the easy path. And I think what happens for all of us is that comparison ends up being the thief of joy, but also it ends up being the thief of actually just energy. You just feel like I'm unmotivated because there's just nothing for me. Because obviously, if I'd only chosen to be something else, I could have gotten that other kind of job, of which that wasn't even something you wanted, but you just thought that was either your path. This is not the time for us to actually try to be thinking about taking the easy way out. This is the time to put in the work. As we all know, the more work you put in now, especially at a young age, the more payoff you're going to get for the rest of your life. And I think students just need to be reminded, like, just stay persistent. You'll be okay. Like you can do it. You've done it. You've gotten here. There's a lot of resources here to help you. There are a lot of people who want to help you. And one of those things that can happen is you'll hear when we talk about networking is that students come to realize there are many, many people, both at Wake Forest, people where they grew up, people in their family, people in their friend network. There are just so many people who want to actually open a door for them and help them find their way to something interesting or find their way to meet someone interesting. But they just have to ask. And if they never talk to anyone, they're not going to be able to get it. It's not going to happen through clicking on social media or LinkedIn collections of followers or anything like that. So, so definitely we will help them figure out how to navigate that piece too. One other thing I'll say, or two really, one is that this idea of a formal internship is not the goal, especially in your first and second year. It's really about trying to find an interesting work experience. And Heidi and I will talk about ways you can get a lot of interesting work experiences in very short form that make it a lot easier to secure than trying to get a formal internship. Most employers are not organized in a way to offer formal internships. And so I think that's something to be aware of and to not ask or require or request your student, what are you doing about getting an internship? When are you going to get that internship? Oh, that internship's not great enough because it's not a good enough company. Like we have a lot of good advice from parents who tell their children, a job, better job, career job, at least three swings to finally figure out what you really want to do. And sometimes it can be better job, better job, better job till you get to career job. And that's okay. Because a lot of times many of us have had first jobs when we came out of college and they weren't the greatest jobs or the greatest companies or the greatest people to work with, but you just didn't know like until you actually get there. And that's okay because our students are so desired by employers. If there's not something I can tell you that you should not have any fear of is that Wake Forest students the employers will say hands down, amazing thinkers, amazing collaborators, amazing communicators, great team players, and will outwork anyone else hands down. I wish I had more Wake Forest students. So just want you to know, like your student is in an environment where all of the things they're learning, their mindset, their skills, their ethic are going to pay off. They just have to get out there and start showing people, and before you know it, they'll have many opportunities. Obviously, the last big question is what about AI? And everyone wants to know, Is this really affecting the market? And what I would tell you today is it is in some sectors, especially in technology, but I would say it's not necessarily saying entry level jobs are fundamentally going away. They still exist, but what's being expected is for students to know how to use it, how to verify that it's making sense, how to audit that actually there's correct data and information, and how to make it better, how to make whatever you've got from it even better than what existed before. So, to the extent that students can know and learn how to use it in their career search, and then also know how to be prepared for the question, if you were to come to work with me and you were to use AI, what would you do? Like, what ways could you add value? And so, we actually have a couple of resources that we created, and we're doing a lot both within our team and around the whole university to try to help uplift the ways that we can help make sure that our students are really comfortable with AI, they're AI fluent, and more importantly, that they are in charge. They manage it, they can think about it, they can master it, and they can actually add value wherever they might go. And if your student's not sure about how to do that, they should take a look at some of the resources we have. They can do these things online while they're off during the summer, and they will be far ahead, both in their work in the academic environment, but also definitely in the job search. All right. That is a lot that I just gave you, but I hopefully it gives you a big picture look as to how we're talking about what's happening and why being a Wake Forest student is a great place to be. And I'm going to go a little deeper with Heidi to share a little bit about what you might be thinking if you've got a student who's trying to figure out what to do this summer and as they should think about how to make the most of their experience here at Wake Forest. So, Heidi, come on board to join the webinar and let you say hi and we'll ask some questions.
Fantastic. Andy, thank you. And parents, particularly, a word of thanks to you. We really cannot say what a privilege it is to work with your students. I feel like I have the greatest job at Wake Forest, and I feel confident that other people would argue that theirs is great too for the same reason, which is we are working with outstanding human beings that you send our way.
Thanks, Heidi. Let's start with a very common question, I think, for many of the parents who are probably on today with first year students. Um, they're wondering, like, if my student doesn't have something this summer or is in the process, what should they be thinking? What should they do? How should they think about this little time before they leave campus, but also what they might do over the summer? Again, whether they, especially if they don't have something. So like, should they get something and what exactly should they be thinking?
I love that question. I love it particularly because I think we have such ambitious students. They're hardworking, they're smart, they get things done. That to feel as if they haven't somehow landed something right now, it feels as if they are indeed, as you mentioned, behind or that there's something that's wrong. And the facts are these: we are seeing internships pop up constantly right now. I mean, there are so many that, in fact, our coaching team feels a little bit overwhelmed sometimes by the number of opportunities that are coming in. All that to say, we want your students to connect with us, and we want your students to know we are here all summer. Our coaches are around not only right now in these last couple of weeks and through finals week once your student finishes, but they can Zoom with us from wherever they are. And so helping them continue to try and land something, that is something that we are here for. And in fact, it's a short time, but it's a meaningful time. And we're getting out before a lot of other schools. So our students still have a jump.
Great. One of the things that I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier is connecting with our office and having access to our coaches. Does that happen both, now as well as in the summer?
Absolutely. So right now, I would encourage every student to, if they do nothing else before the end of the academic year, to come have a drop-in appointment in the OPCD. That is Monday through Friday. And we post those hours on our website, and we want students coming in and dropping in. In fact, this is a great time to get an appointment in the OPCD. Some students aren't paying attention as much to their resume, and so getting an appointment or having a drop-in are really crucial steps that can acclimate your student to the OPCD and to the things that we're able to do. I would add they can do a career exploration appointment. They can work on that first college resume, as mentioned, or LinkedIn, or developing a strategy to create a meaningful summer experience that gets them the opportunity to build transferable skills.
Great. Let's keep going a little bit more. Tell me about some of those experiences that a student can get, both in person versus like online.
Great. Both are valuable. In fact, all experience counts. And so, one of the things that is helpful for students to think about is to go ahead and consider the kinds of skills they want to use this summer and to think through how will I tell that story at the end of the summer? In other words, really being conscious about thinking through the experience they have and the transferable skills that they receive in that moment. Some students will say somewhat humbly, well, I'm just working in a clothing store. I'm just working as a camp counselor. And the facts are these. Those are areas where people are putting their trust and responsibility in you. We want students to be in their minds thinking, I made this many sales. I was able to take care of this number of students and develop this number of programs. All of these are leadership qualities and transferable skills that can help them build some career momentum to pursue something in the summer between their sophomore and junior year. Online, Parker Dewey is a wonderful resource to explore something that we call a micro internship. Micro internships are project based experiences, short term, and on Parker Dewey, they're actually paid. And students can go ahead and apply through Parker Dewey's website after having their resume done in the OPCD. And then go ahead, and they are typically all remote and often startups. Additionally, there's another resource called Forage. And Forage is a fantastic opportunity for students to do job simulations. They will gain very important skills that they'll be able to put on their resume and talk about in an interview. The other great thing about Forage is these are name brand companies that often our students are very excited about. And one of the advantages is that if one of our students completes a Forage job simulation, the company promises to give that student feedback. And two, the student goes into a special segment of recruiting. In other words, recruiters can see when the student applies that they already completed a job simulation. One of my current seniors actually said that her recruiters told her in her interview confirming her internship last summer that they could see she had done a Forage project.
Those are great and really great because we have examples of students who when they've done them, it's really gave them a lot of confidence, but also enabled them to add to their resume and then be able to talk about them in interviews too. So it's definitely worth considering. So
And,
yeah,
and to your point, what I would add, again, related to what you just said, related to Parker Dewey and to lots of different kinds of opportunities, and this concept that all experience counts. Many students go back and work at nonprofits in their hometowns. And they may think to themselves, well, but I don't want to do nonprofit work, whatever that may mean to them. I want to do marketing. Well, all nonprofits need help. If someone has a connection with a nonprofit that they've worked with in high school, going back and asking, could I help you with your social media as well as continue to volunteer? I don't know a nonprofit that wouldn't fall over themselves to make sure that a Wake Forest student had a couple of hours to work on that social media around the other things that student may be doing during their summer. So I think being clever and creative. I have two students right now who are working for their high schools, one doing social media marketing and the other working doing some of the administrative tasks that the school needs help with.
that's great. Let's talk a little bit about just Handshake and the opportunities there and why we think the handshake system and using it is so important.
The handshake system continues to get smarter and smarter. And as we think about some of the innovations that are coming with the increase in use of AI, Handshake is a great platform to discuss. As students use Handshake, they can develop their own profile that they control. It is a marketing profile in the sense that students list their skills, experiences, projects they've had, relevant coursework. And they can go ahead and through their profile begin to um, curate the kinds of jobs and opportunities that they like that are coming to them through Handshake. Additionally, students can save searches, and Handshake begins to send opportunities to that student based on the skills and their career interests and the kinds of things the student has already entered into their profile. I like to tell students that Handshake is a two-way mirror. Employers also go in there to shop, as well as students going in to shop for opportunity. So, preparing that Handshake profile, making sure the skills and experiences are updated. It helps employers find our students, and it helps students make Handshake work for them. So, it makes Handshake smarter for the student.
That's great. One of the other things that comes to mind is when you put your interests in there, then tailored information comes to you both from employers as well as from us based on your interests. So an example would be if maybe you don't know what consulting is, but you're sort of interested, even very lightly, if you clicked on that, then if any of the consulting firms are saying, "Hey, send this to all the students at Wake Forest who are interested in consulting," they would get the information. But if they didn't, they wouldn't get the information. One of the things that we try not to do is spam students with too much email, even though they get a lot, but definitely from the employers or if there are special events or people coming to campus in those areas, like we really try to tailor that messaging. So if the student hasn't updated their interests, they're not going to get the messages. So I think that's really important. It is our way of communicating with students and connecting and also tracking what are they up to and what are they doing so that then when we're giving them coaching advice, it's all based on their track record of what they've been doing. If again they don't use it, then we don't really know, and it's sort of like we're starting from a sort of ground zero. How about let's talk now. Let's say we go to the fall. What are some things that students who are sophomores next fall could they do that could help them get going in a with a good start, like from the beginning of the year, and not waiting till the end?
I like that. One of the things that I would first say is college to career courses are a structured, credit bearing course series that really help our students get confidence and create some of the skills that they will need as they progress through through this whole process. Andy, forgive me, I'm going to have to take a sip of water. Excuse me 1 minute.
Okay. All right. That sounds really good. I'll speak for a moment about the college career courses. So, I think as Corey mentioned, I've now been here since 2009, and one of the ideas that I had was seeing that in order to get students to really do all the work to be truly career ready, if you made it like an academic class, the students would take it really seriously because they're getting credit and they will actually get graded for it. And so when we were fortunate enough to have a Wake Forest parent and trustee say, "I want to make this happen," I was able to then take one of our graduate students who was coming out of the counseling department, and that was Heidi, and say, "Could you or would you want to do it?" And Heidi has a really interesting background, having worked in media and also having had two young men who now are full-blown adults who both came to Wake Forest, and so she really understands students deeply and including in her own research. And so as a result, she created these classes that now are incredibly popular. I'd have to say, like pretty much every student who goes through the class says, "Why didn't you make me have to take this?" Or "Why didn't you make every student have to take this?" And so we can't make students do what they don't want to do, and we try to let them know through forms like this. But these are great courses because they're half semester, 1.5 units, and I can't recommend them highly enough to try to take a look at. So Heidi, why don't you talk a little bit more about them?
Absolutely. And thank you for letting me pause. Parents, as many of you know, we are in pollen season here in the South. And so many of us are taking deep breaths as we also take our Allegra. So, yes, I'm always delighted to talk about the college to career courses. I think one of the most important things for parents to know is that students can go ahead and start as early as their first year, but it's particularly helpful in their sophomore year. And because they're 1.5 credits, they can go ahead and put two of those courses together for a 3 credit block.
Great, great, great. And one of the things that, can you give a little bit of the names of the different, 120, 220, 320, like for different class years so that people can see the full range of what's offered?
Absolutely. So the students refer to them often as the EDU courses because they all sit in the Department of Education. The first course, EDU 120, is about who am I? The second course, EDU 220, is options in the world of work. In other words, in those first two courses, first we do self-exploration. What matters to me? What kinds of challenges are intriguing to me? In the second course, we turn that lens outward. And what we do is to go ahead and let students begin to connect the things that matter to them to real opportunities that they may see. The third course is personal framework for strategic job search. And so students begin to take those personal pieces of who they are and actually begin to create a plan and a strategy that is very tactical. The final course is EDU 360, which is professional and life skills, where we tackle some of the things that students need as they start their senior year, a little tune up of their personal branding. But then on top of that, we look at the very practical things like benefits, budgets, and beginning to have a life after college that's meaningful.
Um, like I said, definitely have your student check those out, and they don't have to take them sophomore year. That's a good time, but they have time throughout their time at Wake Forest. But the earlier they do it, the clearer they have some direction about how to utilize our resources, and also, how to make decisions about thinking about things around work and internships, grad school, things like that. Heidi, one of the other questions, there's so many ways that you can do experiential learning through Wake Forest. You've talked a little bit about the like forage and and ways you can do this sort of online. And also then we know during the summers, how would you say like during the school year you could get some experience that could be work related?
Oh, I'm so delighted you asked me that question because genuinely it's one of my favorites to answer. Our students get really important professional skills in a host of different ways. That includes the clubs that they are on. It includes on-campus jobs. They get experience in their courses. And one of the things we want them to do is to think broadly about those skills. We are about to launch or are launching Wake Charlotte, Wake Washington, and then lots of virtual experiences that happen on campus for students to get engaged. What you'll hear from our students in just a moment, one of them has gotten a lot of professional experience working on campus with other students. There are lots of different ways, and what our goal is to help students think through very clearly what the experiential learning opportunities are that they already have and how to optimize those when they're telling their own story. And this idea, again, that they are creating professional momentum. They get a little bit of experience, they roll that forward into the next professional experience, and on until we are at that point where they're making choices about what happens after Wake. But all of this begins in this opportunity time that first years and sophomores have right now, which is to think about what are the skills I'd like to have in the fall that I'd like to use for next summer. So going ahead and really seeing this as a process.
That's great. I'm going to ask you one last question before I let you take over with the students. One of the things we use as a mantra is you're not married to your major. And a lot of students and their parents think that, well, the number one way to make sure you're employed is to get a business degree or an accounting degree. Or the other way would be like go to med school so you just don't have to think about it and you'll be a doctor in like 12 years or 16 years or something like that. And what I was wondering is how do you communicate to students like yes, business school is one option, but there's huge value of studying in the liberal arts and the value of a liberal arts degree, which I know you and I talk about these days with AI. Actually, there's a whole renaissance, I think, for the liberal arts in a way that is going to be huge, as you mentioned earlier. So, can you talk about that briefly? Because I know a lot of students who are first years right now are probably thinking, "I'm going to the business school," but not everyone gets to be in the business school, and why that is just okay.
Yes, and not everybody needs to be in the business school. For some people, yes, that can be the path. But I just had a conversation with a Wake Forest ally in New York, thinking through some conversations that are happening around, of all things, banking. And the banking person, the recruiter, was saying, actually, liberal arts are the students that we also need. And we actually see our hiring of liberal arts students increasing. And that's because of AI. They can take students regardless of their major and begin to put that training in place for them. So I would say that's one of the pieces around that. And then the idea that it's really skills that matter.
Yeah, that is great. I definitely think that's definitely the case. And again, one of those things that when we look at the outcomes for our students, um, the same percent of students within 6 months of graduation from the business school or the college, comparable over many, many years. And actually, as you mentioned, the employers, whenever we ask them, are you looking for a student from a certain major? Accounting firms want accountants for sure. But otherwise, they're like, no, I just want the best student. And so as a result, that's why in our model is that when employers come to Wake Forest, they're basically open the sort of doorway for all students to apply. The burden is on the student, no matter what you major in, to go to the events, to actually network with people in the company. And I think maybe in the business school, it feels like it's more pervasive just because everyone's doing it because they're all very sort of focused on the job getting process. But I think on the college side, being different actually really stands out as it did on your application to get into Wake Forest. So we really try to honor students in terms of studying things that they really will love to learn and really, want to do well. And I do think that that's one thing that we try to encourage students to recognize and remember.
I think that's true. And in fact, the concluding part of that conversation I was referencing was saying that they're actually very interested. This particular person was saying, I'm really interested in people who have studied history because I need people to know how to think. And I thought, well, what a fabulous way to remind ourselves that in the age of AI, Wake Forest students win. They are thinkers, but more than that, they are teachable, coachable, and they work harder than anyone else. So I really have appreciated that as something that's a differentiator for Wake.
Great. Thanks for the conversation, Heidi. And now I'll let you have the conversation with our students.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to introduce you to
Oh,
two of
your
our
sound just,
students.
can everyone still hear you? Because I couldn't hear you right there.
Can you hear me right now?
Oh, it might be me. I hope it is.
Patrick, can you still hear me all right?
All right.
Producer
Let's see.
Patrick.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
we
Patrick
can
says we can
hear.
hear. It
That's
must be
what he
me.
says.
I'm going to fix
That,
my audio
oh,
off.
that is absolutely perfect. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk with these great students, Aiden and Libby. Hello. I am so delighted and grateful that you are here with us. I'm wondering if you would both unmute and introduce yourself, your name, preferred major, and hometown.
Sure, I can go first. My name is Libby Cash, and I'm currently a sophomore here at Wake. I am majoring in psychology and double minoring in entrepreneurship and marketing communication. I'm from Lewisburg, North Carolina, which is about 40 minutes-ish north of Raleigh to people who know.
Yeah, my name is Aiden. I'm a freshman from Hershey, Pennsylvania. I'm intending to major in econ and have a double minor in chemistry and biology.
I tell you, you are both such classic Wake Foresters. Thank you for those introductions. Libby, I'm going to start with you. Um, I know that you remember what it was like to be at the end of your first year and thinking to yourself, what's coming next? Will you walk us back there
Oh
and
my
tell us a
goodness.
little bit about how first years feel about finding and getting summer experience?
Yes, ma'am, of course. Well, I remember kind of going through, like, I remember the summer before I started Awake, I was working. I remember you talked about how, all experience is good experience. And I'm from a super, super small town. So there was never any, huge corporation that I was going to be able to, work with automatically right before, just because I didn't have those opportunities readily available. So I actually managed a pool, like just a private pool. And I just did that right before I came into Wake. And then as soon as I came into the summer and did my freshman year, I knew that I wanted to go back and do that again, just because I knew it was an experience that was very, very telling, that I was able to take on something like that and manage it. I was actually the head manager from I think 3 years. I just stopped doing that. I did it last summer, but now I'm done. I was the head manager for 3 years, and like I said, I mean, there are things I really, really could not agree more with the idea that any experience is good experience. I mean, my dad also, he does insurance, so I also worked in his office and did things like that. But I just remember at the end of my freshman year, I knew I really wanted to do something in the summer that I could put on my resume that would be substantive, that I knew could show that I had those skills, that I, even though I was young, I was able to develop them in just my first year of college, being able to continue to develop them during the summer. I also took some summer classes just to gain some more credits, which I was able to, work with that, showing that I could, handle classes during the summer and work during the summer. So it honestly just was the whole idea of knowing that I needed to do this and I really, really wanted to be on it. I knew I didn't want to take a summer off. I knew I definitely wanted to be able to work throughout my summers, just so I knew that, I could continue to gain that experience.
I love that. What I hear in the managing the pool and in some of the things that you did that were administrative, supporting your dad's business, but also just taking the courses, there's a story to tell in there, right? I think about the
Definitely.
skills of leadership, of project management at the pool, doing those different kinds of things that then we build on those once we
Right.
go into that sophomore year.
Definitely.
I'm going to ask I'm going to bounce from there, Libby. I'm coming back to you. Aiden, I wanted to go ahead and, as a first year student, you have done some things to really go ahead and lean into some of your interest areas and yet work near home and find meaningful experience. But it's not a formal internship. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so last summer I did two jobs. I worked at Hershey Park, which I've been doing all throughout high school. Last summer I ended up being a guest experience supervisor where I was actually managing a team of like 80, 90 part-time employees every day across all the different functions of the guest experience department at Hershey Park. And I really enjoyed that personally. But I was starting to feel like I was ready for something new. I've been working at Hershey Park for 4 years. So I found a job at the airport near me. I've always had an interest in aviation, and I worked for Delta. I was a contractor for Delta, doing like the above wing, like ticket counter, customer service, and then also working below wing a little bit on the ramp. Like, marshaling the planes in. It's pretty fun. Um, and so I'm planning to go back to do that this summer. They're giving me some more training. They're actually sending me to Atlanta in a couple of weeks to do some more training at Delta headquarters, which I'm really excited about. And if I do end up wanting to go into the industry, which I'm definitely considering, this is the best way for me to get experience
Yes.
right now on the ground, really understanding that operation. Also, but since coming to Wake, I have joined Wake Forest EMS, which I don't know if any of you have heard of that before, but I've really also enjoyed that side, which I hadn't really considered before Wake. So I'm also getting an EMS job this summer. So I'm exploring both sides of my interests to try and figure out maybe where I want to go next year with my courses and where I want to go career wise after Wake. So this is the perfect time to do that. And for those that are still looking for jobs at this point, this is the time to be getting jobs. Like I had my interviews coming up this week for a couple of EMS agencies because the job timeline for most non-interview positions is like right now. Or sorry, non-internship positions is right now. Sorry.
Yes, I love that you just spoke to that. And I'm going to come back. Actually, this question is for both of you, Aiden and Libby. Were you worried at any point that when you were accepting these jobs, one, Aiden, for the this coming summer, but one that you're very familiar with and you've moved up, or Libby, when it was managing something that was very important in terms of responsibility, but it didn't have a formal title? Did either of you worry about how you were going to tell that story, and what did you do?
Sure, I can go first. Of course. So, like I said, the pool I managed, I mean, it probably had 3,000 ish members, which obviously not that many people came per day, but it probably had around 50 to 60 employees. And, obviously it was a private pool where I was from. So that, I mean, talk about name. There was no name. It was just, it wasn't this whole big corporation. And so I think when I came into Wake, I definitely struggled with realizing how I could tell that story just to show that I was able to develop different skills and be a leader in that position. But I just didn't really know how to say it because, I wasn't from a huge city that I had all these other opportunities and I wasn't exactly sure what to do. So I remember I actually came to the OPCD. I think it was actually one of my first semesters at Wake. And I sat down and I talked with one of the counselors or one of the advisors and just said, hey, this is what I've done. I wrote it down and I just wrote it all down on a Google Doc. I didn't have my formal, resume yet or anything like that. And I just said, this is what I did. And I remember the first thing they told me was, Libby, you have to quantify it. And they were saying, that's really, really important is, you want to say how many people you worked with,
Right.
if you managed a budget, how much that budget was. And what they really emphasized was getting like this probably 2 or 3-ish sentence little blurb that just had so many adjectives and so many descriptive words as well as skills that I used to be able to show that this really was, it was a serious job, even though it wasn't
Yes.
a huge name. It was definitely something that I was spending
Yes.
40 to 50 hours a week doing. And I wanted that to be reflected. I was definitely afraid that when, people would be reading my resume, they just would, maybe shrug it off just because, they thought it was a basic job. But I think going to the OPCD and having that appointment and them showing me how to word things and put them on my resume definitely helped me, because ever since then, I feel like every interview I've had, and I have an internship for this summer that's different, they always ask me about that. And they ask me, and I think it's just because they take it not as necessarily that, oh, she just worked at a pool, but oh, she did this, this, and this at the pool.
Right.
And it also dealt with management, dealt with finance, and it dealt with, like management through like the board meetings and the employees. So I think that overall, just having an appointment and going to the OPCD, like they're all so nice and they always really want to help you. And I definitely would never have known how to do that by myself. And so I just think it was really, really helpful.
I love it, Libby. What I hear you saying is that you had this experience, it was a job, and it's professional experience. And part of it is learning how to tell your own story. So for
Mm,
students who might be fearful, oh my goodness, it doesn't say internship in front of it. We don't have
right.
to be fearful.
No, not
We're
at
Wake
all.
Forest. We know how to tell a story. We know
So
what
true.
we know what we are up to. Nicely done. And Aiden, I love what that both you and Libby are optimizing on professionally now on experiences that you started before you even started at Wake. And Aiden, one of the things that I think about for you is how you have already started crafting a professional brand, telling the story about the work you did last summer. Will you, as Libby just did, Aiden, talk about how you took the job where you were working at either Hershey Park and at the airport? How did you tell that story in a way that made it compelling?
Yeah, so I definitely second Libby in the fact that going to the OPCD has been a godsend. I was just looking before this Zoom at how many meetings I've had with them this year, and I was like, wow, I've been there a lot. But they're definitely very helpful. I got my resume reviewed multiple times, and they really do help you bring that all together and kind of put those experiences into your to make your personal brand, right? And so you know, you can pull out the guest experience side of it. You can pull out the management side of it. You can pull out the leadership. You can pull out so many different aspects from all of those um, different job functions that you were doing that you might not even think about. But they really help you with pulling those things out and highlighting what experience you do have. Nothing is too small to be featured on a resume. You can always find some way to make it sound like it was important, and usually it is pretty important.
That's right. It is important. And sometimes when you are the student or the person who is doing the work, you forget, oh my goodness, this is actually a meaningful skill. I just need somebody to help me translate it onto this resume. That's what I hear both of you saying. We sort of touched on earlier this idea that on-campus experience counts as professional experience as well. And both of you, and you spoke to this already some, and I'm going to ask both of you, talk to me about how on-campus experience counts as professional experience.
Of course, definitely. I can start. I mean, this past year, I moved in early to be a student advisor. And I kind of just knew that I wanted to move in early, obviously, but I knew that I wanted to be able to help the freshmen because I remember coming into Wake, I had no friends and I didn't know anybody. And so I had no idea what I was doing. And so I knew it was really, really important to be able to be there for students. And so I decided to go at like the student advising route. And I moved in, I think, probably a week and a half early. And I got a group of about probably 12-ish students. And I took them through the entire orientation week, and we had a bunch of meetings, and I helped them with their class schedules and did everything like that. And I just think it was very, very important because you don't necessarily like have so many different experiences that you can have when you're at school, but when you're jumping on it and like gaining experience doing things like that, even just working with other students, like
That's
that is
right.
something that can go on your resume. And that is impressive that you led a group of people to be able to accomplish the common goal of getting them ready just kind of to go into college. And
Yes.
also, like, I personally, I'm a sports girl and everybody knows that, but I play club softball here at Wake also, and I am our social chair and our treasurer. And those are also things that are on my
Mhm.
resume just because, I mean, obviously I probably wouldn't just put, I play club softball because it's something I love, but I'm also able, to put on that I am collaborative and that I work with other clubs because I'm the social chair. And I also am able to talk about how I deal with the finances through the team as I'm the treasurer. And so I think it's really, really important just to know that anything you're doing at Wake can go on your resume, and the OPCD will help you frame it to put it on your resume to sound super professional. I remember also, I'm also in a sorority, and I was on the committee to plan like a mom's weekend or do something like that. And that's on my resume just because it's something that we had to do, and meet consistently for and to plan. And so I think really anything, like you can really, really frame so many different things, these experiences, whether that's, in a club you're in, or if it's multiple clubs you're in, if you have like even some type of position in a club. Like, and the thing is, I
Okay.
remember how we talked about how I was trying to frame like the Mother's Day thing. She was like, Libby, you're in a sorority, y'all do philanthropy. And so that's what I
All the
put on
time.
my resume. Exactly. And so I just thought it was really, really great just to know that I do have so many different things that I necessarily myself would never have thought, oh, this actually can go on my resume. But there's actually, such a broad opportunity of things to do here at Wake that you will find so many different things that you can just put on your resume. And like I said, the OPCD is more than willing to help you frame it just to make it sound professional.
Yes, because it is, right? And those are all skill related experiences that matter.
Right.
And so I love that you highlighted those. And Aiden, I'm going to pivot for you. You talked about EMS and doing that whole piece on campus, which is so clear in terms of skill building in a host of different ways. As you are thinking, so I'm going to ask you a different question. As you are thinking about the fact that we have first year parents who are listening, thinking about their own children, what advice would you have for parents to support their students and for students to go ahead and get started either with the OPCD or get support?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would definitely recommend like, continuing to explore those experiences here at Wake. As I mentioned, I do EMS. I also work at Deacon Health now at the front office. I'll be starting in the back next semester, bringing patients back as a tech in the back. And these experiences are really helping me try and figure out again what I want to do career-wise. But also, it's just enjoyable. I like working with the people that I work with, and it's something that I like to spend my time doing. So that's definitely a good thing to keep exploring. We always have different fairs with involvement fairs and things like that. Um, I'm also in Dr. Robinson's EDU 220 class, and that's been really helpful for continuing to explore my interests, work on my resume, work on my LinkedIn, doing all of those things that are preparing me for my future, preparing me for, you know, getting my jobs this summer, for possibly doing internships later on. All of these things are really important. So I definitely recommend the EDU classes, going to those involvement fairs, and also just stopping by the OPCD, as we've discussed. Um, Again, I went just about a month ago just to talk through what I wanted my major to be and trying to explore, again, all these various interests that I'm dealing with as a freshman at the end of my first year here. So it can be very valuable and they can help you pinpoint some things that you can do on campus as well.
I love that. Well, Libby, I don't know if you have a nugget, one piece of advice. We're down here to just a minute or two, but is there one thing that you would add to what Aiden just said, a piece of advice for students as they think about summer experience?
Of course. I think, well, as far as like the parent side goes, I think that I just want to emphasize that often, the students, your parents are going to be your first point of networking and contact because, obviously their parents have most likely been in some type of industry or working some type of job that, is going to be like a pathway for the student to take as well if they choose to. But I think it's really important to know that as a parent, like I remember when I, was trying to look for an internship and do things like that, like my dad gave me a list of contacts and he didn't like, he didn't contact any of them for me, but he like gave me that list just so I could, have somewhere to start. And I feel like that's really, really helpful, like, especially that my parents did that for me, just because sometimes when you're in college, you don't know the older employers and you aren't aware. And so I think it's really, really helpful as a parent just to also keep in mind that you are also someone that, your child's going to go to, and they're really going to look forward to you to, give them some type of guidance. I'm not saying do it for them by any means at all, because my parents did not do it for me, but it definitely is very important to know that, your parents are there and they're able to help you. And then as far as for the students, I just think that it's important to realize that anything you're doing is good. Like Heidi said before, any experience you're trying to have, but I definitely would really very much recommend doing something. Like definitely do
There you
something
go.
that you're able to put on your resume, whether it's like the Parker Dewey small internships or the micro internships, or it's like I said, like working at a pool. It, like Heidi said, it does not have to be some huge thing that says internship across the front of it. Any experience,
Right.
like you said also before, is great experience.
I'm so proud for you both. I would say I'm proud of you, and you're the ones who have done the work. Thank you for sharing your stories, your advice. Thank you for what you're doing on our campus, and especially at this time of year, you all. Thank you for joining us. I'll get to see you tomorrow in class, both of you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank-
Robinson.
Thanks, Aiden. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you so much.
Aiden, Libby, thank you very much for all your great experience and sharing what you've done. What great work, just as Heidi said. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Heidi, with just a couple minutes to go, I was wondering if you could take a moment. And I know one of the things that is sometimes hard is to talk about the idea of networking. Libby, talk a little bit about this idea. Like a parent does have the ability to introduce a student to people. Um, Sometimes what parents feel uncomfortable is either I don't know anyone, that's the one side,
That's
or
right.
the other side is they feel like, well, I don't know what my student child wants, so until I know what they want, I can't get it for them. Um, and and so with all that in mind, and then the student themselves is like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? Can you give
Right.
some tips or to parents about how to think about how to bring up networking and how they could be helpful to if their student if they're not quite as resourceful as Libby was.
Yes, I think what I would say is that for Wake Forest students, the word networking kind of gives them the ick. That's what the students say. In other words, it makes them feel uncomfortable because they're just not transactional people, they're relational. And so I think some of the way we help students feel comfortable having those conversations is to call it curiosity conversations, and to go ahead and think of them as asking for advice from people who may be their allies, and they don't have to necessarily be people who are in the area of interest for the student is still exploring, and so having those conversations with people they may already know can be somewhat easier, a little bit more of a warm up than it is to go to have that conversation cold with someone. So yes, have helping the student think through who is in their network. Not that's in their, I mean, perhaps it's in their parents' network, but students have their own networks in terms of people who are at their school, faith community leaders, family friends who may be able to just have a conversation about thinking through how do I get experience this summer? I would say that those are some of the ways to sort of help your student just take that first step to have the conversation. And second, that's our job too. We want to come alongside you, parents. So please send your students to us. We want, as a parent, I did not always, my students did not, my children did not appreciate being coached by me, which, surprise, surprise. I was very grateful for my colleagues in my office who were their people, not me. So let us be that person for you, parents, if that is how you feel it would be helpful for your student. We want to help.
That's great. Why don't we wrap up with your last words of advice for parent of a first year student?
Your students have done remarkable work. There is not a year that goes by at Wake Forest that is not challenging and does not come with its own set of obstacles that your students overcome. And so, I just want to celebrate your student success alongside you. It is a big deal to be here. And two, I want to tell you that whether or not you're having the conversation with your student or not, they are thinking about this summer experience situation. They have it in their head that it has to be an internship. And you might be the voice that says to them, you know, actually, all experience counts. Let's talk about this. And there's some nice people in the OPCD, and they'd like to talk with you too. So those would be the things that I would say.
That's great, Heidi. And I will leave my one thing. One of the things you and I talk about are the dreaded questions that college students don't like to hear. And one of them is, one would be, what are you going to major in? Thinking that actually this choice of major is like the make or break for like the rest of your life. And that this notion that the reason why you get to come to a place like Wake Forest is you get time to figure it out, of which it takes time because they still have more classes to take actually even next year. And they have experience to have during the summer. And there's a lot of things that are gonna happen between now and that moment where they maybe fully have to decide. And that then connected to that, oftentimes the next question is, what are you going to do with that major? And the reason why that's also another dangerous question is that students aren't sure what the answer is to that question.
That's
And
right.
honestly, as we said earlier, you can do a lot of potential things with the major because there's so many other ways you can get experiences at Wake Forest and in the workforce that could lead you down many, many different paths. And that we have so many examples of people who majored in history and ended up as bankers, consultants, doctors, um, accountants. Like they just went all over in the world to many different places. And we have people who actually you might think, oh, if you were a business person, you went into business, who actually went off and became writers or lawyers or many
Counselors.
other different things,
Yes.
counselors. Like
Yes.
like the life is not a linear path. In fact, more than anything, it is a lattice path. It is one where there will be back and forth and up and down and sideways. And actually, our students are so hardworking, so skilled, so capable, they will be able to go into great places no matter how uncertain the world is. And so we're just really confident in them and that we know that if you can guide them to us to just say, you don't even have to know what you want. This group will help you begin to think about how to think about this so that honestly, for the rest of your life, no matter where you are and you don't know exactly where you want to go, you have the tools and the skills and the sort of general frameworks for how to think about it in a very strategic way. So um, you can tell we love Wake Forest. We love Wake Forest students.
Do.
And we really appreciate you parents out there for enabling your students and preparing them to come to Wake Forest and that we're here to help them. So please send them our way. Know that they're destined to do really interesting things this coming summer and that the summer's not even started. So there are many opportunities still yet to come.
I have open office hours tomorrow in the OPCD from 3:30 to 5 if your student wants to drop in. No appointment, no problem. They want to say hello. I'll
Uh,
introduce them to the photo booth. I don't know if you saw Libby's beautiful photo, but that and Aiden's both came right out of that gorgeous photo booth we have.
That's great. Well, there was a link in the chat. Again, the chat thread will be sent around to you all in a few days, as well with the video. And again, we just wish you all a wonderful summer end of the school year. And as always, we like to say, go Deeks.